Hey, what's up? Hello. Welcome back to Fantasy Filmball, the show where we turn movies into sports and sports into something we don't talk about here. My name is Matt, and today I am going to be bringing you our first predictions of the year for the Best International Feature category. I've been putting this off for a little while because I just wanted the final say of the Venice lineup to release. With that, I now feel confident that I know everything that's sort of floating around out there. Now, of course, there's going to be films that I won't talk about today, which will be submitted by countries, films that I've never heard of, that maybe have never crossed my path. I am pretty confident that none of those films will end up being big contenders. It's quite rare that you have something like that come out of nowhere and end up in the Oscar race at the very end of the year in this category. For the most part, when you look down that list of submissions for the Academy Awards, you can kind of narrow it down to films that played at the major film festivals. I'm talking about Cannes, Venice, TIFF, and sometimes Berlin or Sundance. In this video, I'm going to be going through around 30 different countries, predicting what they might submit, and then sort of ranking them in order of the likelihood I think they are to getting a nomination or perhaps a win. Starting off with what I believe firmly will be the winner this year. That is from Norway, the film Sentimental Value. Sentimental Value won the runner-up prize at the Cannes Film Festival. It is currently my favorite film of the year. It is going to be playing at Telluride, at TIFF, at the New York Film Festival. It has a juicy release date from Neon. Everything is indicating that this is the film that Neon is going all in on. They're putting all their chips down on Sentimental Value. And not only does it have the push behind it, this is also a film that is incredibly accessible to an Academy-type audience. It's a family drama about estranged fathers and daughters taking place within the Norwegian film industry. Not only do I think this is winning international feature and a shoo-in for a nomination, I also believe that this is winning Best Picture and at least 6 other awards. This is my early prediction for a sweeper of the season, and so beyond the international feature category, I think this has a lot of legs for more than that. This is a big year in film for Norway. Norway has had some incredible success, and if they were not submitting Sentimental Value, they also have the option of Dreams, Sex, Love from Berlin. It's crazy that we have a Golden Bear winning film that just isn't even an option because the other film that it's competing against is so much bigger. But Dream, Sex, Love is also an incredible film from Norway. If that was what I was predicting for that to be their submission, I would also think this gets a nomination. Moving on to the second place, my expected runner-up in the category, and we got another neon film, and this is No Other Choice from South Korea. Despite this being my number 2 in the category right now, I am actually just a little bit shaky about this one. I think this has a very high ceiling of potential and a very low floor. No Other Choice was just announced today to be competing at the Venice Film Festival. It's a strong contender for the Golden Lion. I think this could end up being another above-the-line player in the international film sphere. However, South Korea has proven to be not the best at submitting films for the Best International Feature category, and they can very easily mess this up. They can very easily go a different direction. Historically, despite Park Chan-wook being one of the best filmmakers out of Korea, I think internationally renowned as one of the great Korean filmmakers, he's only been selected by Korea one time, and that was with Decision to Leave back in 2022, which did not get the nomination at the end of the day. They did not submit Old Boy. They did not submit The Handmaiden. They have repeatedly fumbled the ball when it comes to submitting Park Chan-wook for the Oscar. Looking at the slate that TIFF has announced so far, there are so many other Korean films out there this year that are playing the festival circuit. None are playing the festival circuit in as big or a prestigious way as No Other Choice is with the Venice competition, but that doesn't mean that Korea can't absolutely blow their chance here. So I'm gonna hope that this is just too good of a film for Korea to turn down. And moving on to number 3, this is my third neon film and last neon film in the top 5. And before you ask the question, is it crazy to believe that one company could get 3 nominations? It's happened before in much crazier circumstances. I think back to 2002 when Miramax had 4 out of 5 of the Best Picture nominees. I can't remember off the top of my head exactly what year or what category, but I believe that there's been one instance where one distributor had all 5 nominees in a category. So I don't think that 3 nominees is a stretch for Neon to get in Best International Feature, especially because this is one of the categories where campaigning means the very least. We've had films get nominations that did not even have distribution at the time that nominations were released. Think Lunana, A Yak in the Classroom, which was acquired for US distribution after receiving an Oscar nomination. So this is a category that I don't think it matters who is distributing the film. Anyways, number 3, Brazil with The Secret Agent. Now, Brazil has a lot of great films this year that they could submit. They've got quite a few options, but none quite so big as The Secret Agent, which won Best Director and Best Actor at the Cannes Film Festival. For one thing, breaking a rule, which is that no film can win Best Director and a second prize. And another thing, heavily rumored, almost confirmed, that almost the entire jury of the Cannes Film Festival wanted to award The Secret Agent with the Palme d'Or and were overridden by Juliette Binoche, who wanted to go with It Was Just an Accident because she felt like it was an important moment to celebrate Jafar Panahi. So regardless, The Secret Agent comes away from Cannes incredibly highly lauded with great critic reviews and 2 major prizes. It's also going to be playing at TIFF, will undoubtedly be playing Telluride and New York. We'll get a juicy release date. Brazil is very tactful with their submissions. They know what they have, and they are unafraid to submit the same filmmaker multiple times. Now, Kleber Mendonça Filho has been submitted twice in the past, most recently in 2023 for Pictures of Ghosts, as well as in 2013 for Neighboring Sounds. So he will likely be getting his 3rd submission this year and his very first Oscar nomination. I wasn't overly hot on this movie. I would much prefer that Brazil submitted The Blue Trail, which is the film directed by Gabriel Mascaro from Berlin's competition program. I also am very partial to Apocalypse in the Tropics, which is a documentary film directed by Petra Costa, coming to Netflix this summer. But in Brazil's entire history, they have not submitted a documentary, so you can cross that one off. I've also heard amazing things about Homem Com H, which is a mainstream Brazilian film that is getting incredible reviews from audiences in Brazil. But regardless, I think we don't have to overthink this one too much. We can just say that The Secret Agent is being submitted and it's very likely to be nominated with a neon push and with the prestige that it has from Cannes. Moving on to number 4. This is a film from Iraq called The President's Cake, which screened at the Directors' Fortnight at the Cannes Film Festival, in which it won the People's Choice Award for the Directors' Fortnight category, as well as winning the Camera d'Or, which is the prize for the best first film at the festival. Iraq has never had a nomination, never had a shortlist before, but they've never had a moment quite like The President's Cake. A film that is clicking so much with audiences, that has major distribution from Sony Pictures Classics, that has the prestige of multiple prizes from the Cannes Film Festival, that also has a filmmaker who, despite being an Iraqi filmmaker, works and lives in New York City, will be very close to voters and will be pushing for this film to get nominations. I would be absolutely shocked to see this not submitted by Iraq, not to mention not getting a short list. I mean, the nomination will always be up in the air, but I feel almost 100% certain that this will be on the short list that is released in December. It's also worth noting that almost every year, not every year, we've had a few rule breakers recently, but almost every year, one country gets its very first nomination in the category, and this year it looks very likely that that country getting their first nomination will be Iraq. Fortunately, I held off on making this video because my number 5 in the category, I did not know the name of. I did not know it was actually releasing this year until this morning with the release of the Venice competition lineup, because my number 5 pick is the voice of Hind Rajab from Tunisia. This is the new film by one of my favorite filmmakers coming out of the Middle East, North Africa, Kauter Ben Hania, who previously was nominated in the Best Documentary category for Four Daughters, as well was nominated in Best International Feature for her film The Man Who Sold His Skin, also did an incredible film called Beauty and the Dogs. She is one of the most exciting voices in cinema at the moment, and her new film sounds groundbreaking and important and impactful in a way that I think could be really huge. This is a film that's set in the Gaza Strip and follows the killing of a young girl by Israeli occupants, linking together the power of the filmmaker behind it, Kauter Ben Hania, who has a great track record so far, the prestige of Venice competition, and being a film that is so incredibly topical. This feels like a very strong shot at a selection for Tunisia. I think it could also be submitted by the United Kingdom if Tunisia does not submit it. Feels like a sure thing for a shortlist as long as it's a good film, and very likely for a nomination. I could even see a world where this makes a run at a win or becomes an above-the-line player. But I'll have to hear a little bit more about the film, maybe see the film, see some reactions before I make any big statements about whether Kauter Ben Hania could break out into above the line. Now, I just want to point out something here, which is the statistical unlikelihood of the top 5 that I have right now. You'll notice in my top 5 that only 1 out of the 5 films is from Europe. We have representation from Africa, Asia, and South America, but only 1 film from Europe. That is a statistical unlikelihood. In the past, most years have a split of 3 European films and 2 non-European films. Some years even have 4 European films and 1 non-European film. And so to predict 4 non-European films and 1 European film feels like a stretch. In fact, in the entire history of the category, there has never been a year where only 1 European film was nominated. So not only is this a statistical improbability, there's no precedent for the lineup that I have right here. Of course, if the United Kingdom submits the voice of Hind Rajab instead of Tunisia, then we would have 2 European films in this lineup. But even that is something that does not happen very often. The last time that only 2 European films were nominated in Best International Feature was in 2018. So the lineup that I have, let's just say it's a little optimistic. I have no doubt that things will shake up from here going forward. But let's open this up a little bit. Let's start talking about some of the other films and other countries that might end up in the race for Best International Feature this year. Starting off, number 6, I have France, who I currently believe is going to submit the Richard Linklater film from Cannes, Nouvelle Vague. I gotta say, France is the hardest one to pin down what they're going to do this year, because there's so many patterns that they would be breaking by submitting certain films over other ones. Let's look back at their track record over the past few years. In 2024, they submitted Emilia Perez. 2023, they did The Taste of Things, which they chose over Anatomy of a Fall. 2022, Saint Omer. 2021, Titan. Now, they don't usually do films that are not French, like specifically French language films. In the last 20 years, France has only selected 3 films that are not French language, those being Emilia Perez, Mustang, and Persepolis. Now, Emilia Perez being a film set in Mexico, being in Spanish, Mustang being set in Turkey, being in Turkish, and Persepolis being an Iranian film dubbed in multiple different languages. So, to be fair, there was a French version of Persepolis. Now, why do I mention this? Why do I mention films not in French? The reason is because of it was just an accident. The Palme d'Or winner this year, which a lot of people are expecting to be France's submission, but I say No, I do not think that France will go with a film that is so not French. It is an Iranian production. Jafar Panahi is not a French citizen. I will just also add to this point, they also very rarely submit filmmakers who do not hold French citizenship. In the last 20 years, that same time period, the only example of a filmmaker who was not a French citizen being submitted by France was Paul Verhoeven. All others submitted were either French-born or holding French nationality. And this is a major hit. Against It Was Just an Accident, as well as my predicted submission, Nouvelle Vague, because Richard Linklater is, of course, an American citizen. So I think it's also completely possible that France goes off the deep end and submits something like The Little Sister, which played in Cannes competition, or A Private Life, which played out of competition at Cannes, both of which are French films directed by someone from France. But right now, the reason I'm leaning towards Nouvelle Vague specifically over these other films is that apparently Netflix and Goodfellas are campaigning their asses off with the French selection committee. They are campaigning to have this be seen as the French film of the year. And so while this may not be by a French filmmaker, it is a film about French film. It is a film about Jean-Luc Godard, François Truffaut, Claude Chabrol. It's a film about the making of Breathless, one of the most iconic French films ever. And it is thoroughly a French film. So I have a feeling that what Netflix and Goodfellas are currently doing is doing their best to convince the French submission committee that this movie is French enough to represent the country. A big part, apparently, of why France did not submit Anatomy of a Fall is that they argued it did not feel French enough. You can hope for a surprise submission of It Was Just an Accident by Luxembourg, but that's a very difficult thing to bet on because Luxembourg has tried submitting films in the past that have been rejected by the Academy for not having enough creative control from Luxembourg. So I really believe It Was Just an Accident will go unsubmitted because Iran won't do it, France probably won't do it, and Luxembourg probably won't be allowed to do it. Now at number 7, I have Germany with Sound of Falling. And this played in the Cannes competition where it was one of my absolute favorite films of the festival. It was something that I found to be completely mystifying and difficult to understand and yet enchanting. It's also worth noting Germany is currently on a hot streak. Last year they submitted The Seed of the Sacred Fig. Against all odds, they did the thing that I don't think France will do this year, which is submitting a film by an Iranian filmmaker in exile. But before that, they were also nominated for The Teacher's Lounge. They won for All Quiet on the Western Front, and they were shortlisted for I'm Your Man back in 2021. So they have been killing it with their submissions lately, and I have no doubt they are going to correctly submit Sound of Falling this year. I would like to see this get a nomination. It's one of my favorite films of the year, but I need to put my bias aside because every single person I've talked to about this film has said it's way too much. It's way too difficult to understand. Even Arno, our resident international film expert and art film aficionado, said that this film was just a little too much. And if he felt that way, imagine what people in the Academy are going to feel. As much as I would love for Arno to be wrong, I'm going to err on the side of, I think he's right. If Arno was feeling like this one was a little too artsy, a little too out there, then I have a really hard time imagining the Academy really latching on to this one. So while I think it is quite likely for that shortlist, I find it hard to see it go beyond that. Then we have from Iceland, The Love That Remains. Iceland doesn't usually have a ton of films to submit, but they don't typically mess up with their submissions. They often know what they have and they go for it. This is a film from Hilnir Pálmason, who his 2 last films were both submitted by Iceland, being Godland and A White White Day. And Godland was actually shortlisted for the Oscar, and I think this one will be too. But they're very tactful, and it's worth noting that last year, they were able to discern what works and what doesn't, because instead of submitting their Cannes film, When the Light Breaks, instead they went for the populist film that played in mainstream cinemas, Touch, and they ended up getting a shortlist, and I think probably were close-ish to the nomination. This year, they are going to land on the shortlist once again. It's a very funny film, surprisingly. Has some clever touches of surrealism. Kind of reminded me of like a Federico Fellini film at times. And being distributed by Janus, I could see this get a good run in art house cinemas, potentially building up some buzz, and maybe even surprising with a nomination. At number 9, I have a film from a country that has never submitted before. This is All That's Left of You from Cyprus. This film played at Sundance to rapturous response and has just recently sold to Watermelon Pictures in the US, which is a prominent distributor of Palestinian films. This is a film about Palestine, about the Gaza Strip. It's worth noting I moved this just a little bit down in my rankings of the category, just because we have that Tunisian film from earlier, The Voice of Hind Rajab, which I think will probably get a little bit more attention. I also have this one a little bit lower because despite the incredible response that this film has gotten from Sundance, it's also from a country that has never submitted before. Can Cyprus even get together a submission committee for the Academy Awards? That's yet to be seen. It's totally possible that this goes completely unsubmitted. It's really hard to bet on a country that has no history of submitting because we have no idea whether they will or whether they won't. If Cyprus does pull something together, it will likely end up on the short list, but whether it gets the nomination or not, that's another story. I haven't seen this film yet, so I can't really comment on its content or its quality. I've just heard really good things about it. At number 10, I have Spain with Serrat. And Spain is a tough one to count on because they have messed up before. They've messed up before in a big way. They often go completely off of what you would expect. Like back in 2021, they submitted The Good Boss instead of Parallel Mothers. The Good Boss being a film that had little to no festival presence, and Parallel Mothers being a film that ended up getting 2 Oscar nominations, although it was not eligible in the international feature category. This year, Serrat is the obvious choice for them. It is a film that got rapturous response out of the Cannes Film Festival, winning the jury prize alongside Sound of Falling. But also, there's 3 other Neon films above this. 4, if you count It Was Just an Accident, as my also ran for France. So how is this going to survive being potentially the 5th priority for Neon? Is it going to get enough eyes? Is it going to get on enough screens? Is Neon going to be able to lobby with Spain enough to get this to be their submission? And it's also worth noting that Spain has 2 other films that are very viable submissions for them if they do not choose Serrat. Carla Simón, who did the film Romeria this year, she's a Catalan filmmaker. This is her 3rd film, and up until now, she's 2 for 2 for submissions. Summer 1993 and Alcaraz were both submitted by Spain, and it's very likely that Romeria will be too, following in those footsteps. Serrat could be too big to pass up on, but there is a history between Carla Simón and the submission committee of Spain. And even if not that, there's a film called Deaf, which played out of competition at Berlinale, and that's a film that currently is ranked within the top 10 films of the year by LETTERBOXD users. So Deaf has been a big success in Spain and could be the populist success that gets submitted there. And to be honest, I think any of those 3 films ends up on the short list. So really, can you say that Spain would make a bad decision any way they go? No. I don't think any of them will get the nomination, but I think all 3 have a fair shot of making the shortlist. Moving out of the top 10, but still within that shortlist range of the top 15, I am going to go with Hungary, which has 2 films in Venice competition this year. The one that I'm leaning to as their submission is Orphan, which is the new film by Laszlo Nimes. They've submitted both of Laszlo Nemez's films. He won once for Son of Saul. And this is yet another World War II historical drama. It's set shortly after the end of the war, about a young orphan who is waiting for his father to return home. Silent Friend is their other option, which is a film directed by Ildiko Iñárritu, who was previously nominated for her film On Body and Soul, which was also the winner of the Berlin Golden Bear. While I'm leaning Orphan over Silent Friend, both of these have drawbacks. They were both apparently rejected from the Cannes Film Festival, so they are both in Venice because they were not accepted at Cannes, which could be a mark against them, although there have been many very good films that have been rejected from Cannes in the past. This is going to come down to what is received better at the Venice Film Festival. At the moment, I feel like Orphan just makes more sense because, of course, it's got that subject matter. But again, if Silent Friend comes out of nowhere, like wins the Golden Lion or something like that, then maybe that's their submission instead. Number 12, I have Colombia, which I believe will go with Simon Meza-Soto's film, A Poet, which played at the Cannes Film Festival, was one of the biggest surprises from the Cannes Film Festival for me. It is a cringe comedy, sort of in the same vein as like a Todd Solondz film, or like Nathan Fielder's The Curse. It's one of those films that's about a character that you just cannot help but painfully stare at, even though all you want is to look away. Colombia usually doesn't have a lot to choose from, but when they have something that is really touring the festival circuit, they know what to do with it. They submitted Memoria in 2021. They submitted Monos in 2019. They had a good run with Birds of Passage and Embrace of the Serpent. When Colombia has something, they don't fumble submitting the correct thing. And this year, they have A Poet. It's playing at TIFF. It's playing likely at New York, and it has a lot of acclaim coming out of Cannes. They're not going to fumble this one, and it's very likely to get a shortlist because it is delightful. And another film that is delightful is the Taiwanese film Left-Handed Girl, which is co-written by Sean Baker, being distributed by Netflix. I could see this be potentially a big player, maybe even being a bigger Netflix contender for the international feature category than Nouvelle Vague. Maybe Left-Handed Girl ends up being in this category because it's up there with some of the best Sean Baker films. Even though he didn't direct this one, his mark's all over it. He produced it, he co-wrote it, and he edited it. So it feels like a Sean Baker movie all the way through. Taiwan often knows what to do with their submissions. They are often bang on with submitting the right film. But the question is this going to be deemed too much of a US production to be submitted? Because despite being shot in Taiwan, set in Taiwan, and partially funded in Taiwan, it also is a mostly American team, and I think you could very much argue that there's too much US creative control on this film, and it could be disqualified. But if it's not disqualified, I think that this is a very clear placement for a shortlist mention. It's got such a great pedigree. Honestly, such great pedigree that I could even see this ending up in our nominees. It's just that big question. Is this going to be ruled ineligible? Then number 14, I have Switzerland, which I believe is going to submit the film Late Shift, which played out of competition at Berlinale. This one has the great misfortune of coming out in the same year that The Pit has been just doing phenomenal things. This has the exact same premise as The Pit. It follows one nurse on a late night shift, a very long shift at the hospital. But while The Pit does it in real time, it's able to do that because it's 15 episodes. This is a 2-hour film that follows one woman over the course of a very stressful shift at a hospital. It also stars Leonie Benish, who was notably in last year's Oscar-nominated film September 5th, as well as The Teacher's Lounge back in 2023. So it's got a recognizable face at the center of it, and it has gotten really good reviews out of Berlinale. It's going to be playing at Locarno soon, and will be releasing in Swiss theaters shortly afterwards. This, if submitted, could end up on the shortlist. I'm a little bit on the fence, especially after seeing the film. It's less powerful than I thought it would be, and I do think that The Pit and the knowledge of The Pit might work against it with some voters when going through it, because it's just not that. It's just not as intense. Ultimately, though, I think it's pointless to compare Emmys and Oscars, so what the hell am I doing here anyways? Disregard everything. Right now, I think this can get a shortlist, but it's a toss-up. And then finishing off my short list, I have Chile with The Mysterious Gaze of the Flamingo, which won the Un Certain Regard prize at Cannes. Chile is an interesting country because they have a lot of filmmakers that are very renowned in the United States. And it would be very easy to just say, well, Sebastian Lelio has a film, Pablo Larraín has a film, they'll be submitted. But it's not usually that easy with Chile. Think back to 2023 when Chile had El Conde, what everyone thought was going to be a shoo-in for a nomination. Did they pick El Conde? No, they went with The Settlers instead, because The Settlers was a prize winner in the Un Certain Regard at Cannes. It had more festival presence than El Conde, which premiered in competition at Venice, and then kinda just disappeared afterwards into the Netflix void. I mention this because Chile also has a film called The Wave, directed by Sebastian Lelio, who previously won the category with A Fantastic Woman back in 2017, has prominently worked in the United States, making films like Disobedience, like Gloria, like The Wonder. This is a musical about a feminist protest set on a college campus. Honestly, I think it's really close between these two films, and I think either of them could get on the short list. But I just have a feeling that Chile is going to lean to the film that won a prize versus the film that just has a big name attached to it. That's why I'm leaning towards The Mysterious Gaze of the Flamingo over The Wave. So now we're gonna get out of my short list. These are just other films that I have on the horizon, which I think are worth mentioning, could get onto the short list, just generally could be submitted. Number 16, Nigeria has My Father's Shadow. My Father's Shadow was the runner-up for the Camera d'Or at Cannes, which is what I mentioned earlier The President's Cake received. It's the prize for the best first feature at the festival. It was extremely well received in the Un Certain Regard category at Cannes. I believe that this is not in English, which has been a major holdup for Nigerian films in the past. In fact, Nigeria only started submitting films in 2019. They had never submitted before 2019, and of their 3 submissions since then, because most years they don't have a film that is eligible because most of their films are in English and do not qualify for this category because of that. Of their 3 submissions, 1 of them were disqualified. So technically, Nigeria has only successfully submitted to this category 2 times total. Could this year be the 3rd? Absolutely. Could this be their first shortlist? Absolutely. But we have to look at the track record of the country. We have to note they don't often submit. And again, I don't know if this film is predominantly not in English. I still need to watch it. I probably will watch it over the next few days, but this video will be out before then. Then there is North Macedonia with the film DJ Ahmet, which played at the Sundance Film Festival. It's a lovely little film. It's very Sundance core, about a young Muslim boy in a farming community in Macedonia who discovers that he absolutely loves EDM music when he accidentally stumbles into a rave nearby his village. It's cute, it's charming, it's probably the only thing that Macedonia has this year, and with some festival presence, this one is likely to be submitted. And honestly, you know what? I could see it be shortlisted because it is cute and it feels very American. Like, this is cut from the same cloth as like Little Miss Sunshine, or 8th Grade, countless Sundance indie movies. Then at number 18, we have Neja 2 from China, currently my predicted winner in the animation category, but sitting outside of my predictions for the international feature category, mostly because I think international feature is a little bit more highbrow, I would say, and I have a hard time seeing the committee here nominate not just a sequel, but an animated sequel, even though I think this has a great chance at animation, especially with A24 doing a stateside release of this. It will be submitted by China. I mean, we have to look at China's history of submissions. They like blockbusters there, despite the fact that China has some of the best art house filmmakers in the world. It's really interesting because I think any country's submissions to Best International Feature really show you what that country wants to be seen as in the world of film. China wants to be seen as a blockbuster juggernaut, which is why in the past they've submitted films like Wandering Earth 2. Neja 1 was submitted in 2019. They go for blockbusters. They never go for the art films. And Ne Zha 2 is the biggest Chinese film of all time. I don't see any way that China looks at what they have with Ne Zha 2 and goes, we want to go with Resurrection instead. Like, no, are you fucking crazy? They're gonna go with the $2 billion blockbuster that they have, that everyone in the country loves and saw 5 times. And you know what? It's one of my favorite films of the year, so fuck it. Nominate it. Please, do it. I would be so happy. At number 19, I have Belgium. And Belgium has a few films this year. At the moment, the one I feel like is most likely is the new Dardenne brothers film, Young Mothers, which played in competition at Cannes, where it won the screenplay prize, got great reviews. It was one of the only films from the competition lineup that I didn't see because I thought it looked bad. And I was shocked when it won an award. I was surprised to see they've only submitted Jean-Luc and Pierre Dardenne 4 times total. And they haven't submitted them since 2014. So they've submitted them for their big movies. Rosetta, The Sun, The Child, and 2 Days, One Night. They have those 4 submissions, but they've never been nominated. And despite the fact that since 2014, the Dardennes have won multiple prizes at the Cannes Film Festival, including for Young Ahmed, for Tori and Lokita, they were not submitted for those films. And so it's very possible that following suit with that, they will not be submitted for Young Mothers as well. And so if that's the case, what could Belgium go for instead? The 2 other options that they have would be Reflection in a Dead Diamond, which played the Berlinale competition. It's a campy spy movie, sort of goes into some of the darker genre tropes, some horror elements to it. Shudder has this one for distribution in the United States. Or, if that is too weird, then maybe they go with Adam's Interest, the new film from Laura Wandel, who previously did Playground, which was submitted by Belgium in 2021 and made the shortlist. But at the moment, I think the safest thing is just stick with the Dardenne brothers. They won a screenplay prize. The film has done well in the French and Belgian box office, I believe. So although history sort of proves that they might not go with the Dardenne brothers, it's just the safest option at the moment, but that's why they're down here at number 19. Then at number 20, Portugal, who I believe is going to submit Lav Diaz's new film, Magellan. Now, Lav Diaz is a Filipino filmmaker. Potentially, Magellan could be submitted by the Philippines, but it is a Portuguese production. It is in Portuguese, and I think that Portugal will submit it. But if they don't, they could go with the Uncertain Regards selection, I Only Rest in the Storm, which is a really great film. Very, very well done. 3.5 hours. I think that might put them off from submitting it because it's very long. I was really surprised to see Portugal has never been nominated. Beyond that, they've never even been shortlisted for the Oscar. So that really surprised me. Portugal is really big on festival type films. You know, they will submit a Miguel Gomes film if they have the ability to. They go for the challenging films. And maybe that's why the Academy doesn't nominate them too often, because they're just a little too heady. And while Magellan is a film by Lav Diaz that is a 2.5 hour version of what seems to be like a 7 to 9 hour long film, it seems like it might be a little bit more Academy friendly than some of Lav Diaz's other films, or than some other Portuguese options this year even. I mean, I Only Rest in the Storm is not the most Academy-friendly film. I haven't seen Magellan. Maybe it's not Academy-friendly either, but it just seems like something that the Academy might go for. Getting into those 20s now. Ooh, getting low down this list. Now I have Italy's prospective submission, La Grazia. This one's a little bit tricky because I feel like I always just go, oh, they're gonna submit the Paolo Sorrentino film. And then a lot of the time they don't do that. Like last year with Partenope, which was another Paolo Sorrentino film. Granted, did not get good reviews, kind of got dumped in January of this year because it just was a bomb on all standards. La Grazia is the opening film of the Venice Film Festival this year. It's also playing in competition. Maybe, just maybe, this is a return to form for Paolo Sorrentino. But I was also surprised to see they don't just submit Paolo Sorrentino every time he makes a film. He's actually only been submitted 2 times ever. for The Great Beauty and The Hand of God. Both times submitted, he got the nomination. So maybe they just don't submit him unless he is nomination worthy. It's also interesting to note, they go with Venice films much more often than Cannes. In the past 4 years, 3 out of 4 have been Venice selections, only 1 has been Cannes, which makes a lot of sense seeing as Venice is Italian and probably a lot of the best Italian films of the year go to Venice instead of Cannes. So could that be indicative of the quality of La Grazia versus Partenope? Maybe. But look, if La Grazia is another misstep from Paolo Sorrentino, they do have 2 other options from Cannes that got very solid reviews, being The Last One for the Road and Heads or Tails. So my bet is still on Sorrentino because it's just the safest thing to go with, but I think that it just depends on, is that film better than Partenope? And if it's better than Partenope, then, you know, probably it'll be submitted. 22, Thailand, coming hot off of almost getting an Oscar nomination last year for How to Make Millions Before Grandma Dies. Very unfortunate that that one missed out on the nomination. It felt like it had everything it needed to get it. Honestly, it would have been my second favorite in the lineup if it had been nominated. So very sad that that didn't get in. I think that this year they are going to submit A Useful Ghost, coming from the Cannes Film Festival. This played in the Critics Week selection, and it just sounds so offbeat and funky and fun. It's a story about a world in which ghosts are real, and it follows a man who dies and then tries to convince his wife to stay with him even though he is now a ghost. And he ends up trying to prove to her family, who are very anti-ghost, that he can still be good. So he possesses a vacuum and makes himself useful and proves that he can really pick up after himself and he can really do chores for the family. It sounds so weird and fun. It got some solid reactions from Cannes, not glowing, but I wonder if this is one that could potentially make a run at a shortlist mention. Then at number 3, Poland, which has Franz. And this is a very interesting one because this is coming from the filmmaker Agnieszka Holland, who has done so many big films in the past, has been nominated for Oscars multiple times. She most recently made the film Green Border, which was notably passed up by Poland's submission committee. Franz was widely expected to play at the Venice Film Festival until it was announced as a world premiere at TIFF, which I think had a lot of people scratching their heads. Why would it do that? That's so strange. And so maybe that is an indicator that this is not as strong a film as Green Border was. But to be completely honest, Poland doesn't seem to have many other options this year. They may pick something completely out of nowhere, but if they pick something completely out of nowhere, I don't think it's coming even close to a shortlist mention. But it's completely possible that Franz is just mid as all hell. Then number 24, here's a little bit of a long shot, but on Becoming a Guinea Fowl, I wanted the United Kingdom or Zambia to submit this last year. UK instead went with Santosh, and Zambia has never submitted a film and did not submit anything. But I have heard rumblings that On Becoming a Guinea Fowl could still be eligible for this year, because if it is, could definitely see this make a shortlist mention. Granted, I don't see what else the UK has. I mean, maybe they go with the film that I mentioned earlier from Kauter Benhania. It's possible that they could dip back into 2024 films and go with On Becoming a Guinea Fowl. Or, just like with Cyprus earlier, Zambia could submit their first film ever. But that's kind of crazy to count on, so that's why it's so low down this list. And at number 25, Ukraine has the film 2,000 Meters to Andrivka, which played at Sundance, got an award in the World Documentary category. This is the follow-up film from the director of 20 Days in Mariupol. And although it's not as strong as 20 Days in Mariupol, I see this also getting a documentary nomination. Definitely not a win this time around, but last time 20 Days in Mariupol did get onto the shortlist for Best International Feature. And it got nominated for Best International Feature, I believe, at the BAFTAs. It's still worth watching out for Ukraine. There is still a contingent of the Academy who is absolutely going to vote for a Ukrainian film to make a stance. They also have the film Two Prosecutors that played in the Cannes competition from director Sergei Loznitsa. And then number 26, I'm gonna go out on a limb here, actually. I'm gonna say they go with a very rare anime submission, and they put Scarlet in. Scarlet has just been announced as an out-of-competition selection at the Venice Film Festival, which is very exciting for it. It's also playing at TIFF. It's got a great festival run ahead of it, very likely for an animation nomination, to be completely honest. Mamoru Hosoda, the director of this, also known for Mirai, it's my favorite of his films, Wolf Children, The Girl Who Leapt Through Time. He has never been submitted by Japan before. They are very picky about who gets submitted multiple times. A great example of this is that Ryosuke Hamaguchi did not get submitted a second time. He got Drive My Car Best Picture nominated. Japan did not submit Evil Does Not Exist. Hirokazu Koreeda has been submitted by Japan only 2 times over his incredible career, but he did not get submitted for Monster, even after he got a nomination for Shoplifters. There's only a handful of filmmakers, like 4 or 5 ever, that have been submitted more than 1 time from Japan. And so if you've been submitted by Japan, it's very likely you're not getting submitted again. So this year, that means we can strike off the list Renoir, which was by Chie Hayakawa. She was in the Cannes competition this year with this one, but in 2022, she was submitted by Japan for Plan 75. So bye-bye Chie Hayakawa, you are not getting submitted this time. There's also Love on Trial. The filmmaker of that one has not been submitted before, so that could happen. But I feel like it might be Mamoru Hosoda's time. He could join a very small group of anime filmmakers who have gotten this submission before. There's only been 3 before, but I think Hosoda could join that list. That list before this is 2019 Weathering With You, 1997 Princess Mononoke, and 1994 Pompoko. Hosoda could join that list very easily. And at number 27, Romania, which I believe is going to submit Radu Jude's Dracula. This one is premiering in competition at Locarno, and it sounds absolutely fucking off the wall bonkers. Dracula is being described as a film about a man who's playing Dracula in a community production. This actor goes missing, causing the townspeople to go hunting for him like an angry mob in the spirit of Dracula. In the meantime, this is interspersed with, I believe, like 11 different stories as written by ChatGPT about Dracula, like reimaginings of Dracula. It sounds like a weird movie, but it's totally in line with Radu Jude and his previous films, like Do Not Expect Too Much from the End of the World, or Bad Luck Banging / Loony Porn. Romania has submitted Radu Jude like 3 times now. They will go for him even for the craziest shit imaginable. So Dracula is what I think they do, but there is also the possibility of Continental 25, which is the other Radu Jude film from this year. A much more normal Radu Jude film than the Dracula movie. At number 28, there is Canada, who I believe will be submitting Peak Everything. It has just been announced as the closing night gala at TIFF this year. Canada is a really interesting one because despite the fact that we have 2 national languages, one of them being French, they really don't like submitting French films. They hate submitting French films, especially recently. Telefilm, who chooses the submission every year, really wants to prove that we are this multicultural nation, and so they've been going out of their way to submit films that originate from around the world. For example, a few years ago we had this film called Rojek, which was submitted over many other films that could have been submitted and likely would have gotten shortlisted, but they chose Rojek because it was a Kurdish film that was co-produced with Canada, and they wanted to show off, we've got cool international co-productions. And in 2022, they went with Eternal Spring, which was another documentary, and that was a Chinese documentary. But again, they were like, we want to show off that we're cool, multicultural, and so they didn't go with a Quebecois film. And even last year, though Universal Language did have some French in it, it was primarily in Farsi. And so Canada really likes showing off multiculturalism in their submissions, which is why I'm a little bit hesitant to call Peak Everything as the submission. And more than likely, they're going to submit some nothing documentary that played at Hot Docs and was never heard from again. The one thing going in Peak Everything's favor is that this is a cross-cultural production between Quebec and Ontario. It partially takes place in Northern Ontario, partially takes place in Quebec, so it's half English, half French. Now, it might be disqualified because of how much English there is. I don't know how much English there is, but it's also possible that Telefilm Canada really likes the opportunity to show off a English-French film. Now, granted, if Canada submits something completely out of nowhere that is just like a bullshit co-production just to show that we make things with other countries, then they're not getting shortlisted. They're not even worth mentioning. If they submit another Rojek, which I never saw, or Eternal Spring, which I never saw, Canada is one of the worst countries at submitting the right film. And now the last film to talk about today, or the last country, we should say, is India. Number 29, India, who deliberately fucking sabotages themselves every single year. Every single time they have something, they mess it up. Last year, All We Imagine Is Light. Big festival contender. It won the Grand Prix at Cannes. It ended up getting a Golden Globe nomination for Best Director. And what did India say? Oh, no. It's not Indian enough. And they instead submitted a mainstream film, La Pata Ladies, which did not get a shortlist. Because, duh, what are you thinking? What are you thinking? No, but what the Indian Selection Committee said is that they said it felt like the rest of the world had already chosen for them that All We Imagine Is Light would represent India. So they deliberately went with something else as a fuck you to say, you don't decide what Indian cinema is, we decide what it is. And in doing so, they completely dropped the ball. They dropped a for sure guaranteed nomination and instead ended up with nothing. And it was just to stick it to the rest of the world's cinematic community. Meanwhile, on the other hand, in 2022, RRR was the sensation of the year, a big mainstream hit that did amazing things in India and worldwide. And instead, India went, we want to go with something more indie, and they picked The Last Film Show. And so this year, India has this film, Homebound, which did great at the Cannes Film Festival, is now going to be playing in the gala program at TIFF. It doesn't seem as big as something like All We Imagine Is Light or RRR. It's Homebound is not one of those films, but it's still big enough that it should be a certain submission, which is why I'm certain that India will not submit it, because again, there's nothing that the India Film Submission Committee to the Oscars enjoys more than shooting themselves in the foot. And so I believe they're going to submit a mainstream film this year, and the one that looks most likely is Tourist Family. It's a mainstream big film, one of the highest rated films from this year on LETTERBOXD. So possibly, maybe this could be the best submission for them. You never know. India has such an amazingly huge film industry, crossing so many different languages and cultures. So there's always an enormous pool to draw from. And yet every time they still manage to get it wrong. It's crazy. Anyways, that is the end of the video. I have mentioned so many international features for you guys. 29 countries, 30 if you count Luxembourg for It Was Just an Accident. Let me know if there's anything that I've missed. Let me know if your country has a film that you think is going to be submitted that I did not talk about today. I always love hearing what you guys have to say. But as always, thank you so much for watching. My name's Matt, and this has been Fantasy Filmball.